Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is Monday. It's the first show of the week. Today is the 2nd of September 2024. We've got lots to discuss with you. So without further ado, this is the lineup. We'll begin with a day 331 of the Palestine-Israel conflict that has engulfed not only the region but also beyond. Although there are talks of ceasefire and there's a lot of pressure from the Joe Biden side to have this ceasefire deal accepted, nevertheless, the amount of brutality that continues to move on also is paramount. Whether it be in Gaza, whether it be in the West Bank, the Israelis are continuing. At the same time, there is a huge furor in Israel as well, because 6 bodies of their captives have been uncovered, and as a result of it, there have been tens of thousands, or in fact hundreds of thousands of protesters within Palestine as well, who are only demanding one thing, that the ceasefire deal be implemented. It's a huge pressure also on the Netanyahu government. What kind of political implications will it have on Israeli government? This and more will be discussed in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, today concerns the US elections. Now, a lot has been happening as far as the US election is also concerned, whether it be the pressure that is also fuming from the Israel-Palestine conflict on Kamalaharris and on Donald Trump, whether it be the different important issues, whether it be immigration, whether it be abortion, whether it be the other aspects of US foreign policy and national policy, that both the leaders are in the center light of, will be part of this second segment, where the elections are going and how they are moving forward. What are the polls saying about both the leaders as well? Finally, we'll be talking about life expectancy that has been reduced by 3.3 years in Pakistan due to air pollution. This has been witnessed and written in a report that was provided by the Air Quality Life Index. And of course, this not only highlights what is happening as far as air pollution is concerned in Pakistan, but also across the world, citing the different reasons behind it. Finally, we'll be talking about striking images that reveal the depths of Titanic's slow decay. A new expedition to the Titanic has revealed the effects of slow decay, with a large section of railing that is now on the sea floor. Also, they have found one of the relic that is known as Diana relic. We'll be also talking about that. Let's begin with our first segment without further ado, and that concerns day 331 of the Israel-Palestine conflict. We've been joined by 2 guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. Firstly, in the studios, we've been joined by our very known guest, and of course our regular and of course then we'll be talking about also our guest, Ms. Salama, who has joined us online. But of course, we will begin with Ambassador Naela Chohan, who is a former ambassador and who joins us in the studios as well after a brief hiatus. Ambassador Naela Chohan, thank you very much to have joined us. Ambassador Naela Chohan, Ambassador Joe Biden is going to sit down today. I mean, it's Monday, but of course we are in the evening, that's early morning in the US, with US negotiators, and will push for a hostage release deal in the Israel-Hamas conflict. And we'll also talk about the ceasefire deal, because a hostage deal is part of that. This is something that Joe Biden has been pushing for since quite a number of weeks, but to no avail, because always Israel has come up with some kind of new amendment in this ceasefire resolution, which has further prolonged this ceasefire deal from happening. Also, hundreds of thousands of people have joined a general strike in Israel, demanding a ceasefire deal, as anger mounts also on the Netanyahu government. The Washington Post is also reporting that the US is in discussions with mediating parties, Egypt and Qatar, as well, about the contours of a final take it or leave it deal that it plans to present to Hamas and Israel in the coming weeks. What's your take on all of these developments? Do you feel that a ceasefire will ever happen?
Well, we have to, because there are various aspects of what's happening in Palestine. Firstly, talking about the American politics, President Joe Biden's government has, of course, been providing arms to Israel, has been supporting. You might recall in one of our earlier programs, the visit of Netanyahu to USA.
Yes, where he addressed the Congress.
Where he addressed the Congress, which was a historic event, I think, in the history of Congress. not many heads of states were given that privilege, and to have done so at a time when so much atrocity was being committed by the Israeli Defense Forces in Palestine in general and Gaza in particular. So, Joe Biden then became, under a difficult situation where he was being criticized by Americans. The American students had taken to streets against the American support to Israel. But having said that, why is it urgent for them to have the deal now? There are many things that we need to look at. Firstly, that American elections, the presidential elections are coming, and they want some kind of, strength for their candidate, because Kamalaharris, also a Democrat, a former vice president. So, they want something to show to their people. Therefore, the politicians need some takeaway from their activities. Having said that, what is happening in Israel? In Israel, you have to look at it in two ways. One is Netanyahu and his right-wing party's support for committing these atrocities, and the general public that is now protesting, as you said, on the streets after the killing of these 6 hostages that were in custody of Hamas, but were killed by Israeli raids.
Yes, that has been confirmed by their correspondent.
Yeah, they were not killed by Hamas, they were killed by Israeli raids. So now Netanyahu has a lot to explain for. Firstly, there was already a criticism against him that he was preferring genocide to finding a solution. Secondly, that he was prolonging the war to continue his seat there, because he is also now politically vulnerable. Although within the government, since it's right-wing led government, he is not under that stress. But as far as the masses of people are concerned, he is now under grave criticism, which might take a toll on his political career.
Look at the number of protesters that have come out, and of course that also includes very important organizations. We'll talk about that a bit later, but let's go to our guest who has joined us all the way from Gaza. Alaa, Salama, thank you very much to have joined us. Alaa, Israeli forces continue to pound the Gaza Strip. They have killed dozens of Palestinians, 11 people sheltering in a school in Gaza City, 4 traveling in a car near Deir al-Balah. At least 40,786 people have been killed so far since the 7th of October. 94,224 have been wounded. It is being said that Israeli military has demolished every single building within 4 kilometers of the NEWSROOM corridor that it created to cut Gaza in 2 halves. Then, of course, we know about the number of casualties as far as children, as far as women, as far as the elderly, as far as those who were in the hospitals is concerned. Are these not blatant examples of ethnic cleansing and crimes against humanity? When is all of this genocide going to end? What are the latest updates as far as these brutalities are concerned?
The collapse of health system and mass destruction leave people in despair. Thousands of people live in tents as they miss the proper medications and the smallest needs, and they cannot provide it. This is not the first time they target the schools. In Gaza they target many schools, and even in Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis. Lastly, the Israeli jets targeted a school in Deir al-Balah called al-Manfaluti and killed 15 civilians. And we have to shed the light that schools are shelters for displaced people, and it's sheltering thousands of people inside the schools. Regarding the situation in Gaza Strip, specifically in the south of Gaza Strip, in the past 24 hours, Israeli forces have carried out 4 deadly attacks in Gaza. In the past few weeks, Israel issued many evacuation orders and across Gaza, and which is more than 84 of the Gaza Strip got evacuation orders, and even in the humanitarian zones, as they said. But even in the humanitarian zones, people are targeted from drones and from drones in airstrikes.
All right. Thank you, Alaa. Stay online with us while we continue talking to our guests in the studios. Ambassador Naela Chohan Sahiba, when we look at the different aspects of what is happening in Gaza, it's not just Gaza, it's also the West Bank, and now the Israelis have kind of also shifted base also, not only from Gaza but are simultaneously also attacking the West Bank. Is this deliberate to not only instill fear in what is in the people in Gaza but also in the West Bank, and what is the ultimate end game as far as this whole atrocity is concerned? When and how do you see this ending?
I don't know how it will end, but as far as Netanyahu's agenda is concerned, every time that he goes and addresses the UN, he has a new map of Israel. They're talking about greater Israel. How far will that go? We don't know, because if they continue with their agenda, they could include Syria in their territory, they could include Egypt in their territory, they could include Jordan in their territory. They can include so many countries. He's not going to stop. He needs to be stopped. As you're well aware, International Court of Justice has also now given its order, and yet he's not stopping.
I mean, and this is unfortunate to say the least, and with the way the world is moving also in condemning it, I just hope that some kind of positive end comes to all this brutality that we are witnessing since the 7th of October. Going back to Alaa, I'd like to understand something. In the wake of all of this, the role of UNRWA becomes very important. Now, it says 87,000 children in Gaza have received the first dose of a polio vaccine, as this drive is continuing also for a second day. What they need not only is a vaccine but also a ceasefire. The campaign is aiming to reach 640,000 Palestinian children below the age of 10 and comes after health officials detected the first case of polio in Gaza in 25 years. How important are campaigns such as these in the wake of the outbreak of the disease?
The absence of electricity and clean water for more than 10 months, resulting in suffering of people from many diseases, mostly from skin diseases, and children from polio. Actually, the UN decided to vaccine about 95% of the children from polio, and that because the destruction of health system, and health workers are still waiting an approval from Israel to let them do the vaccination over Gaza in different Gaza areas, which is they didn't have until now, and the health of thousands of children are threatening of this disease. According to the UN National Security Advisor, the ceasefire has reached in Gaza to the smallest details, but still on the ground, the Israel bombardment continues across Gaza and repeated displacement of Palestinians.
All right. Coming to you, Ambassador Naela Chohan, responding to the deaths of the 6 Israeli captives, which of course the senior Hamas official Izzat al-Rashid has said that they were killed in Israeli air raids, as you have also pointed out. He says he's trying to contort all of this in favor of the Israeli government. Israel's cut says his country is going to respond with full force. He says Hamas is responsible and will pay the full price. Also, Israel's UN envoy Danny Danon has requested an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council to address the situation of the captives which are still being held in Gaza. What are you predicting? What could happen now? Are we looking at further escalation, looking at the reaction that we've seen from the Israeli government side?
I don't think it will be an escalation as such, because they are going, step by step. They're expanding. They are killing. But these particular developments that you're alluding to perhaps will further reinforce efforts for finding solution, efforts to bring ceasefire, and hopefully efforts to bring peace.
All right.
So it is important that despite all the deaths, ceasefire is implemented.
All right. Coming to you, Alaa, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, his New Zealand counterpart Chris Luxon have made a ceasefire appeal during a joint news conference in the Malaysian capital Kuala Lumpur. They say we are both united in calling the immediate ceasefire, getting this around the negotiating table and finding a two-state solution as well. He also talked about prospects for a ceasefire that did not look encouraging in present. He said the only hope is to engage the United States to take a stronger stance. Will these interventions help the cause in any way? What do you expect from the international community?
What we need from international community is to put more pressure on Israel and its allies to stop this genocide and reach a sooner ceasefire, because people are killed every day, every minute. There is no safe place, there is no humanitarian zones, as Israel is saying. Just there is bombardment.
All right. Ambassador Naela Chohan, Israel's biggest labor union, Histadrut, has called for a general strike starting from this morning to pressure Netanyahu and secure the release of the captives held in Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of people have joined this general strike in Israel today, despite the fact that a local court in Israel has asked them to stop this this demonstration. Now, just look at all the people who are participating. There is Israeli Business Forum, companies from Israel's tech sector, Israel Bar Association, the Teachers Union, the Association of University Heads, Tel Aviv's municipality, the Manufacturers Association of Israel, Israel's opposition leader and former Prime Minister Yair Lapid. Is the Netanyahu government finally come under the pressure to maybe move swiftly towards a ceasefire deal? What's your take?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, because as yet he thought he could get away with it, and then he had full support of the right-wing parties that were also in decision making and government. But now the people that have taken to streets, as you have mentioned, it will affect Israel's economy, because as you said, the trade unions are there, the business associations are there, the journalists are there. Now Netanyahu cannot pretend or have a blind eye to what his own people are now talking about. So because he is a politician, because he is looking forward to extension of his mandate, he would have to succumb to the will of the people, his own people.
When you look at the international reaction, United Nations, I mean, I'm kind of shifting towards the West Bank. The UN's Antonio Guterres calls on Israel to end its operation in the occupied West Bank and strongly condemns the loss of lives, including those of children. EU's foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell says Israel's major military incursion in the occupied West Bank must not be the premises of a war extension from Gaza and a repeat of the full-scale destruction that was seen in the Palestinian enclave. These reactions, we've seen them in the past as well, coming from Antonio Guterres on other issues, on Gaza, on the loss of lives, on the on the reduction in facilities being provided to the people in Gaza, and so on and so forth. This time, will these statements have any effect whatsoever on the Israeli incursion or on the Israeli brutality?
You see, they don't bother if it is all rhetoric. They will bother when it is implemented. So at this moment, as I said before also, if United States says that it's not going to provide arms to IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, the fact of the matter is that they already have an agreement in force which is valid till 2028. So if they say they are not going to provide arms, it means it would be after 2028. So until 2028, USA is treaty bound or agreement bound to continue to provide arms and ammunition to Israeli forces to continue with their atrocities. As far as EU is concerned, you can see how France, President Macron also gave his views on it. Rhetoric is there, but what are they doing on ground? And how Israel is being supported? As yet, luckily, Iran has not responded to the attack that was, perpetrated in Tehran.
It has shown political maturity, to say the least.
Definitely, as I said before also, they are 5,000-year-old civilization. They'll take their revenge, but at the right time. They have stalled it for a propitious moment. That also is a pressure on their minds as far as Netanyahu is concerned. He knows it will come, he doesn't know when and he doesn't know where. So that itself is a stress on him. Then people in the streets are a stress. And then so-called allies are also, even if it is rhetoric, are condemning or criticizing Israeli government's activities in Palestine. So it's not that easy for him. It's not a bed of roses for him if he continues with his policies.
Final question, I'd like a short answer, ma'am. The United Nations World Food Programme has suspended staff movements across Gaza after one of its a vehicle, which was clearly marked United Nations humanitarian vehicle, was hit at least 10 times by Israeli gunfire at a military checkpoint. We all remember there was an international food supply truck that was also hit in the past by the Israelis, and that created a huge furor, but of course that died down. Now that the WFP has suspended aid to Gaza, what implications do you foresee as far as food, water and all the necessary supplies to the Gazans is concerned?
This will further augment the sufferings, as you spoke to Alaa also about polio. This is the first time in 25 years that polio is being recorded. The suffering is enormous, and if food supplies, there are children dying of malnutrition, Omar Barza. It is unbelievable that those lives have not had, had living. They just had been born and they died out of malnutrition. Think of those mothers, how they are enduring that pain. How many people are dying? You said 40,793, which is almost 980, almost 41,000 people have died. Almost 1 lakh people are injured.
And we don't know how many
destroyed.
people are still under the rubble, and the final figures will come out once the war ends.
If and when it does, So it's an enormous tragedy. It is a blemish for Netanyahu and for Jews all over, because this is not bringing bad name to Jews.
Of course.
Not all Jews are Zionists, but these activities of the Israeli government are bringing bad name to Jews as well. Not all Jews were bad, but now they are all, stigmatized.
That is true. But let's hope for a bright future, and let's hope that the ceasefire deal comes to fruition very, very quickly, so that some kind of positivity is seen. And secondly, let's hope that this ceasefire, whenever it happens in the coming days, also leads to some kind of sanity within the Israelis, so that we could see finally peace in the region. Thank you very much, Ambassador Naela Chohan, to have joined us on this very important topic, that is the Israel-Palestine conflict. We've been talking to you for quite a number of months now, but we are in the 11th month of this conflict, and for the moment we don't know till what time it will continue. Thank you very much, ma'am, to have joined us. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns the US elections. As the elections near, because they of course are going to be held in November, the tempo of all the Palestinians, of the Democrats and the Republicans also, that are participating in the different campaigns is also intensifying. We are seeing kamalaharris at different campaign rallies. We are seeing Donald Trump in different interviews at different rallies, J.D. Vance, and of course the deputy nominee of Kamala-Harris as well, who is also campaigning along. And different points of views, the media is predicting a lot of things. There are different polls that are coming to discuss what the reality of all of it is, in fact, as we speak, of the United States of America. Who will lead, who won't? We've been joined by Mark Meirowitz. He's a political analyst, joins us from the United States. Mark, thank you very much to have joined us. Mark, my first question is going to be a very lengthy one, so please bear with me. Labor Day traditionally signifies the beginning of the end of the presidential election cycle. Campaigns are fanning out across the country this week in a rush of activity. It is of course the beginning of the fourth quarter in American politics as well, and we've seen a lot of activity from Kamala Harris and Donald Trump as well. The Trump campaign trying to defend itself after a physical altercation between a Trump aide and a cemetery official, which of course created headlines, but which of course I would like you to give your point of view. The army in the US has given a statement that an official at Arlington National Cemetery was physically pushed by a Trump campaign aide. Then of course Ms. Harris also talks about this in a statement, and she says that the cemetery was a solemn place that should be free of politics, describing the campaign's filming of Section 60 as a political stunt. Then the Trump campaign releases a statement signed by family members of 7 of the 13 US troops killed by a suicide bombing at the Abbey Gate in Kabul airport during the withdrawal of Afghanistan 3 years ago, and spoke of the heroism of the troops killed at Abbey Gate, but also blames Ms. Harris for the politicization of the cemetery, asserting that it was the vice president who had disgracefully twisted Mr. Trump's visit into a political ploy. Then Trump and his campaign also post videos from the family members on social media that similarly attacked Ms. Harris. What do you make of all of this? I mean, I'm just jumbling a lot of questions together to collectively ask for your point of view on what has happened.
Well, first of all, the Labor Day piece, is not really relevant here because it's a very strange election. Kamala Harris was not the candidate for president until recently when Biden dropped out. So we have something very unusual going on here, and the timing of it is very unusual because, in effect, Harris was in, Waltz became the vice presidential candidate. They were at the Democratic convention. There were no primaries, no voters voted for Harris or Waltz. They're in, they're campaigning, and the election is on November 5th. So I don't think we can use the same metrics and analysis that we usually do for elections that proceed in the usual way. Now, about the situation at Arlington, that has been pushed way out of proportion by the Democrats, and the media here also has focused on this. The bottom line is it's a highly political issue, number one, because it relates to the 13 American soldiers who were killed in Afghanistan, and that ties in to Biden's policy on Afghanistan and the pullout from Afghanistan. And the truth is that Trump was invited by the families of the soldiers killed at Abbey Gate to be with him in this section in Arlington. The whole thing's been pulled out of proportion, and the fact of the matter is that we really have to stop doing that because, truthfully, on all sides, it's sacred ground for Americans. It's where our soldiers are buried, and both sides should stop politicizing it. And but as far as out of proportion, the Democratic and media, NPR, etc., criticism of this is really outrageous, because the bottom line here relates to the Afghanistan policy. So what the Democrats want to do is deflect attention from the Afghanistan policy and the pullout, which was considerable disaster for the United States and ushered in the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. And they want to deflect that, and they want to focus on Trump's interaction with families who invited him to Arlington. So I think we have a very strange and fascinating election, but I think very disturbing also because of the timing being so compressed, and Harris and Waltz just appearing on the scene and Biden stepping out. That is very traumatic, I think, for American politics, and really it concerns me. Thank you.
All right, but Mark, I'd like to understand, before I move to my second guest who's also joined us, what about the filming? Do you think that it is allowed in cemeteries such as these to film certain parts of that cemetery? Did Trump ask for or request for permission from the families of those who had laid down their lives? And then, of course, adds to that the comments that have been filmed by the families of these US soldiers who were killed at the Kabul airport. What do you make of that? What's your comment on that?
My comment is simple. Section 60 in Arlington, technically, you're not supposed to take photographs. That's true. But the Gold Star families, the families of the soldiers who perished at Abbey Gate, wanted Trump there, wanted to be photographed with him. So it's really very problematic. Who do you emphasize? I think we care about the families. We care about their feelings. We care about this botched policy on the part of Biden in pulling out American troops and American ordnance from Afghanistan. And recently the Taliban paraded all of the American equipment, hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment that they took virtually without a fight. So that's what's really this is about. As far as the families, I say I listen to their concerns. Technically, they shouldn't have done it, but the families, their feelings are very, very important, I think, to Americans. So that's also a factor to be taken into consideration.
All right, Mark, stay online with us. We've been joined by our second guest, Ahsan Hamid Durrani. He's Director, Policy Research Center. Ahsan, thank you very much to have joined us. Mr. Trump on Saturday, Ahsan, signaled his support for a ballot measure that would legalize recreational marijuana in Florida. While he did stop short of a full endorsement, he did say that he did not believe that marijuana should be criminalized in his adopted home state, where it is, while it is legal in other states. But of course, his position pits him against the state's governor, Ron DeSantis, and most of its Republican leaders who are also working to defeat the proposal. What's your take as far as this is concerned?
Well, I think, Omar, it's the series of popular political stunts that Trump has been promising to his voter base. So I think it's a continuation of those measures, and especially attracting, with such measures, attracting youth voter base. That could be, one of the reasons he is taking such, a position on this issue.
Coming back to you, Mark, I'd like to understand abortion. This is one of the topics that has been on the lips of both the Democrats and the Republicans, and of course this has been a flashpoint as well. Now this election race has returned to this topic, that is that of abortion. Mr. Trump has drawn fresh attention to the fight over reproductive rights last week. He appeared to suggest that he would vote for a measure that would expand abortion access in Florida, angering conservatives. Then he said he is going to vote against it. He has also floated a proposal to require insurance companies or the federal government to pay for in vitro fertilization treatments. Democrats have welcomed the focus on the issue, having campaigned on it effectively in the 2022 midterm elections as well. Whose point of view is being lapped by the US voters? What's your take?
Well, I mean, you're seeing a lot of crossovers in the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, you've got Kamala Harris, now saying she doesn't want to tax tips of service workers. That was Trump's idea. Now, as far as in vitro fertilization, that's a hot issue for conservatives, and supporting in vitro fertilization is problematic for Trump to support it. but that's been brought up a lot by the Democrats, so the Republicans really need to address it. It's a problem. The very diehard Republicans who are anti-abortion are not going to like that idea, but at the same time, the way that Trump coins it, and the way the Democrats also coined it at the Democratic Convention was, Walz talking about how hard it was to have children, even though he misstated the fact that he uses in vitro fertilization, he actually didn't. So this issue is kind of out there, and I think Trump's trying to diffuse it. The problem with Trump is that he does these things piecemeal. So he'll pick up this issue without understanding that maybe he's picking up a very explosive issue, and then he rides with it and he takes the consequences. He needs to think a lot before he supports a position. And on this one, he may get some real pushback. On the other hand, what's the choice for conservatives? The choice for conservatives is to go against Trump because he supports in vitro fertilization, or support Harris. I mean, that's not the option. Republicans and MAGA, the supporters of Trump, are not going to support Harris, even if Trump supports this. And also, I would say that at the end of the day, even if Trump gets in, he still has to push this legislation through. And I think that'll be very difficult, because if the Republicans are in control of one or both houses, he may not be able to even get that forward. So a controversial subject. He picked it up. It's a hot potato, as we say, and it's unclear what impact it will have.
Mark, but I'd also like to understand something that was interesting for me, to say the least. Kamala Harris indicates that she is going to have a Republican within the cabinet if she comes into power. Do you feel it's an interesting mix if that happens, and vice versa? Do you feel Trump should also include a Democrat in the cabinet if and when he comes into power?
I mean, Harris's point about putting a Republican, and what's a Republican? I mean, if you ask the Trump supporter, is he going to, who are they going to put in there? Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger, or someone who's what we call Republican in name only, someone who's an anti-Trumper? That would definitely be amenable for Harris to do. So I don't think it says anything significant whatsoever about what Harris is saying. And she didn't say she would do it. I think she said she'd consider doing it. And as far as Trump is concerned, I mean, look, RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., just dropped out of the race, although his name is still on the ballot, and apparently he might get a cabinet position, and he's on the transition team. So, I think Trump has an open mind, and there are many Democrats who have become very unhappy with the Democratic Party. So he would probably include somebody like that. I don't think this is really a watershed development on either side. They pick all kinds of people. And
you have to admit it, Mark, it's an interesting development. You have to admit it. It's interesting from a reader's point of view, especially international readers. Coming to you, Ahsan, Representative Ro Khanna, who's a progressive Democrat from California, tells NBC's Meet the Press that Kamala Harris is a progressive who's pragmatic, focusing her campaign on improving the lives of working and middle-class families. Do you agree?
Well, I think the election promises so far are progressive. We have to agree that much. But be mindful that Harris has a baggage of Biden administration that she will carry, she is carrying with her. And how she navigates that baggage and come up as a fresh face, that's yet to be seen. I mean, she's clearly leading the polls, which indicates that she's connecting with the voters, especially with the young voters. What lies in front of her are huge economic reforms that Biden has been able to translate into policy, and that means taxing the rich, improving infrastructure, and creating more jobs. The unemployment in U.S. has been one of the highest currently. So, I mean, these are the reforms and the policy actions that are needed on her part. But so far, I mean, in terms of rhetoric, in terms of election campaigns, she is connecting with young people. There has been social media campaigns by young voters in her support. Youth groups are coming forward, supporting Harris. clearly she's a young candidate. I mean, she's twice, 2 decades younger than Biden. She's almost 18 years younger than Trump. So she has that support of young people. So, I mean, how much she translates that into policy is yet to be seen.
All right. Thank you very much, Ahsan. Hamid Durrani, Director Policy Research Center, to have joined us. Let's revert to Mark Meirowitz. Mark, interesting questions coming our way, and I'm sure you'll have a very interesting answer as well. Democrats have found their so-called leader in kamalaharris, as is seen by the polls, and she has this definite edge over Biden. She's way younger and she's more aggressive in her approach, but her campaign chief Jen Dillons talks about her as an underdog. Mr. Biden never declared his campaign an underdog. How can it be that a campaign that by all metrics is better off than it was in late June is now pushing a narrative that things are worse than they were when Mr. Biden was in the race?
I know everybody wants to be an underdog, and because it's Americans like an underdog, but it's not correct, because look, where we are right now is basically the Democrats repaired the damage from Biden's debate. They've got a candidate in there now, but it's a dead heat. And the problem with Harris is she's been vice president for 3.5 years, and now she's the candidate, having been in effect selected by the Democratic Party. She doesn't give press conferences. She doesn't give valid interviews. She gave an interview on CNN, which was really an utter disappointment. It was a packaged item, edited item, 42 minutes, edited down to 18 minutes. And as far as her policies, what are her policies? And it is unclear to know what they are. The ones she's unleashed or talked about, fighting price gouging or funding new home construction and all sorts of other things. Economists have looked at that, including The Economist magazine and other top, and the Wall Street Journal and other top economists have looked at it, and they've said these are disastrous. I was just listening to Kevin O'Leary, who was on a program called The Shark Tank, and he's a top investor in real estate, and he said her programs are so calamitous and so disastrous that they would destroy the American economy. So in other words, she doesn't speak about her issues, she doesn't answer questions, and then she puts out these policies, which are not policies because she doesn't explain them, and she doesn't answer questions.
All right, let's talk about her policies, Mark. She has rolled out an economic agenda that includes new money for first-time homeowners, construction of 3 million new homes, and measures against price gouging on food. Yet the specifics are not what energized most attendees. It was a possibility of making history with Ms. Harris, and of course, as a lot of Democrats say, stopping Mr. Trump. Will this energy roll over to election day? The polls suggest that she has a slight edge over Mr. Trump. Will that edge retain itself in the month of November, or will the Republicans, move over and roar over to take the lead?
Well, I mean, as far as the Harris surge, that's unclear. And as far as the polls, look, polls have margin of error. So even if the numbers are close, one way or the other, it doesn't mean anything, because the margin of error means that it could go 3 points one way or 3 points the other way. So we really don't know. And we're very early, even though we seem close, the election, it changes as we get closer, especially because we have a debate on September 10th between Harris and Trump. And this is pivotal for Harris because she doesn't answer questions, doesn't discuss. She goes to rallies, and you're right, it's a surge. She goes to rallies, the Democratic convention, they have millions of balloons and everybody sings and they have a DJ. That's true. But the question is, what is she going to do when she is president? And why is it that after 3.5 years as vice president, we don't know what it is that she actually accomplished? She certainly didn't accomplish anything on the border. And as far as her economic policy, your point about the price gouging, I mean, it is very clear that, number one, we don't know what that means. Number two, what is gouging? What's the percentage of gouging? Is there price gouging? And the policies she proposes, and I'm sure you'll remember these, are very similar to what the Soviet Union in price controls. I think we had something like that under President Nixon in the 1970s, and it was an utter disaster to the American economy. She seizes on...
To continue, we would have loved to continue. We're a bit short of time, but Mark Meirowitz, thank you very much to have joined us all the way from the US to discuss US politics. I'm sure you'll be part of many other programs in the future as well to discuss that. So thankful to have joined us tonight. Coming to our last two stories, the first concerns air or the pollution in the air across the world in the South Asian region and in Pakistan. Now, a recent report by the Air Quality Life Index has delivered a message that is quite alarming for people across the world in South Asia and in Pakistan. It highlights an 18% decline in air pollution in 2022. It attributes largely to above normal rainfall, but it also talks about the significant external threat to public health in the region, including in Pakistan. The report notes a 10% decline in particulate matter levels in 2022, and also it says that the average resident's life expectancy is still reduced by 3.3 years due to this air pollution. In cities like Peshawar and Lahore, it says pollution levels are higher, life expectancy is shortened by over 5 years. A very alarming report nevertheless. Finally, striking images have revealed the depths of Titanic's slow decay. It has shown many new things, of course. For example, the loss of the railing that was immortalized in the film Titanic, as well, that is now in the bed of the sea. But there's also another thing, the rediscovery of the Diana statue that had been first discovered in 1986, which of course is a perfect argument against leaving Titanic alone. But a lot of people want this statue to be recovered at the earliest as well. So Titanic in a decay, but nevertheless new discoveries as far as the different ornaments that were present there is being done. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.